Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome to the 100th episode of the Footballguys DFS Powergrid. It has been presented this year by RotoGrinders.com. I'm Dan Back. Been a pleasure playing host on this show with these guys. Of course, we've got Devin Knotts, we got Tip and Pick, and we have Phil Alexander. And here, cheers, fellas. 100 episodes. Absolutely incredible. Devin's still working off the hangover from last weekend's wedding. That's fine. Drinking the coffee. I get it. But we're going to do some special stuff for you. We got giveaways. We're obviously going to be talking the DFS slate and having a good time. That's what we do on this show. Greatly appreciate all of you guys tuning in, not just this year, but over the last couple of years that this show's been going on. And if you're out in the YouTube chat, give us a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that bell so you get all the notifications about the new episodes coming on Footballguys. And wherever podcast you might be listening to, leave a review. Be nice to us because it's episode 100. Devin, you're the ringleader here. You're saying
we're gonna have
goods. So
we're gonna have some fun.
What's the plan for today?
All right. So here's the deal. If you are into memorabilia or if you want Footballguys subscriptions, I think we're giving away 5 subscriptions. I'll post all the details as far as what we're giving down in the comments. But you have to like the video and comment on the video. In order to do that, you will get entered into a raffle. We will announce the winners next week's show. So important 2 steps: like the video and comment. We're giving away a couple of fun things, nothing crazy, but for those that are into sports cards, we're giving away a Troy Aikman rookie, an Aaron Rodgers rookie, a couple mini helmets. Let me see if I can grab these here. A.J. Dillon for you Packers fans. And then we have one that's topical for this week. Taysom Hill, maybe starting a quarterback this week. And then a couple other things for you Clemson fans. So Travis Etienne signed picture and a T. Higgins signed card. And then we're giving away, like I said, we're giving away some Footballguys subscriptions for the rest of this year and next year. And it's going to be fun. So
we're in too on subscriptions.
Okay.
I told you I was
is in too. Everybody's in the party.
We'll do football for the rest of this season, and then we'll do some football for next year too. So we're in on that. My only request is for one of the contests, okay? Because I know some of this is going to be random, but we're going to do a contest here, and it's the first person in the YouTube chat who can identify the song that John sang in drag when we used to do the Footballguys RotoGrinders show years ago. And John actually dressed up as a woman, wore a bra, and put in the comment section what song that was. It probably exists somewhere on the RotoGrinders podcast feed or our YouTube page. But John, that's what I'm putting out there. So
this is a wild goose chase. Nobody look for that. That doesn't exist.
But it's been awesome. So we're excited for that. So be sure to leave a nice comment in there. We'll pick out some winners for you guys, and certainly appreciate you guys, enjoying being with us on this show. I won the 3-man last week. Devin was too hungover to enter, so I think I've won 2 out of the last 3. We said we were going to show the lineup, but unfortunately we were too busy with getting our memorabilia together. So we'll have that for you next week. But let's jump on in because it's another week of DFS. That's what you're tuning in to this show for. And this week, I think a lot more interesting for us from a game total point of view, John. Last week was kind of a dud. This week looks like we've got some really interesting storylines. And what a week it's been. Like a ton of news already here, and we're not even to the weekend yet.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Obviously the sad news coming out of Las Vegas with Henry Ruggs, but we've had a slew of COVID, AJ Green. I mean, we'll talk a lot about these things throughout the show, but then we have some quarterback information coming down with Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers, and so The Vegas value chart that I put out on Tuesday, I went back to update it today, that being Thursday, and it's changed dramatically. We've got 3 games that are fairly high of interest. You've got the Vikings going over to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. 2 high-powered offenses, and Lamar Jackson looks like a pretty good play this week. We'll talk about him. The Chargers take on the Eagles, and both of these games have 50-point totals. And then just a notch below that, Denver traveling down to Dallas to take on my Cowboys in a game that I like quite a bit this week for fantasy purpose. That's 49.5, but I included in that upper end. As far as like team totals are concerned, though, there isn't a whole lot at the high end this week. You got Buffalo taking on Jacksonville. Your Jags, Dan. It looks like this is a blowout in the making, on the road, no less. So Josh Allen going to be super popular this week. And then we talked about the rest of those teams. The one that kind of stuck out to me, and we'll talk about them, the Miami Dolphins taking on Houston. I guess it's going to be that type of thing this year with anybody who plays Houston is going to have a high team total. The Dolphins, as of tonight, have the 5th highest team total on the Vegas board at 26 points. And they get a lot of cheap players, including Tua, who we'll talk about in just a moment at 5,800, who I think led you to victory last week in our 3-man, if I'm not mistaken, Dan.
No, I used Josh Allen. The week before I went with Tua. I believe you did as well.
Yep.
I went with the Allen Diggs combo, and I was absolutely despising Stephon Diggs until he got the touchdown, and then everything just kind of like
First half was rough.
It was really rough because he was so cheap on FanDuel too. I had him in like 40% of lineups, so kind of got bailed out a little bit there. Devin, let's start with you in the quarterback front because this is sizing up to be an incredible week, and I say that, and especially for tournaments, because we've got guys on the cheap that we can go to because we're without Aaron Rodgers. We've got Taysom Hill back under 6K, and plenty of other names to consider as well. And then, of course, we've got the high-end guys that John mentioned. So let's start with cash. What do you think the right direction is to go there? Because I think in tournaments, there's like the list is very long this week.
I think this week it's one of 2 guys. I'm not going with the low-end guys. I'm probably, as of now, going with Lamar Jackson against Minnesota. Cooper Rush tore this defense apart last week. Threw for 325 yards and 2 touchdowns. I would love to get up to Josh Allen. He's playing at an MVP level. That $900, if you can find a way to do it, by all means, do it. But I think it's going to be challenging. I think it's going to be a little bit difficult. There's not a lot of great values. We'll get into some of those in a little bit. But for me, I'm probably starting with Lamar Jackson this week and just trying to figure out the rest of my lineup.
That's what happened, boys and girls, when you throw Trevor Lawrence's name out last week in cash. You go safe this next week, and I'm with you because I think Lamar Jackson's going to be the chalk, and rightfully so. And John, you had your little black-eyed Joe. It seems like you're in agreement with him as the top target there for cash.
Yeah, I think he's the top target for all the reasons that Devin has said. And you've also got some questions in the backfield there. I think Latavius Murray looks questionable as well. Not that that's a big issue, but any additional opportunity that Lamar would have inside the red zone, it counts for something. I also I agree with Devin wholeheartedly on his calls. I think that Lamar is the play, and then if you can get up to that extra 900 to get to Josh Allen, that makes a lot of sense. If you are going on the lower end, I don't recommend going down. I mean, the highest value on my board is Jordan Love. And although I like him as a prospect, I don't think you need to go there this week. There's enough value elsewhere that you don't have to take a chance on him. I think Tua, we've talked about this in the Vegas section. Tua is going up against Houston, 5,800. I'll say right now, the entire Miami Dolphins team is too cheap this week. And Tua, outside of last week where Phil called this very boisterous shootouts against the Buffalo Bills that never happened, Outside of that, Tua's had some pretty good weeks over the past month. 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, including 3 games approaching that 300-yard threshold that you need for the bonus on DraftKings, one of which did go over. I think he's a fairly safe play this week at 5,800. But again, going back to where I started, Devin, he called it. It's Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson if you can get there.
Phil, are you excited about this position for tournaments? And by the way, I want to compliment you. That hoodie looks like so comfortable. Like,
it's wonderful.
Man. It looks like comfy season there. But what do you think about this quarterback position, man? Because George, we don't have 4.4K quarterbacks very often on a slate. Now, maybe there's not the high end guys that we need to jam in, so not that many guys are going to play him, but the matchup is pretty good against that Kansas City defense. So it's not like a tough spot for him to come into. He's probably going to be throwing the ball 30 plus times in this game. Is he at all viable for you in tournaments, or are you nervous about the ceiling?
I am nervous about the ceiling. It's not plan A, let's put it that way, but I'm willing to bet when I run 150 lineups through the optimizer, I'm willing to bet that I'm going to end up with a few Jordan Love lineups. I don't know exactly which way I'm headed yet, just because I think there's so many other better plays. It's one of those weeks where there's not a chalk roster construction really, because you could do just about whatever you want. Josh Allen is going to be chalky, but I want him in 10% of my lineups too, just because that spot is so good. I mean, Jacksonville came off a bye week and Geno Smith dissected them. I think he threw one incompletion the entire game. This is Geno Smith we're talking about. So I don't know, that you even want to get away from that in tournaments. John talked about Tua on the low end. And then we've got a lot of games in that Vegas no man's land. And it's usually from that range, the 45 to 47 point totals that I like to look in tournaments, because one of those games is going to go over and end up shooting out. And this week we got a lot of them. So for tournaments, I don't mind Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati-Cleveland game. I like both sides of Vegas and the Giants. I think you could play Derek Carr and Daniel Jones. We talked about Taysom Hill. We need a little bit more information there. Sean Payton is doing his usual, I don't know who's going to start. It's going to be both of them, and who even knows what's going to happen. But there's that. If Kyler Murray is healthy, I don't mind him in the Arizona-San Francisco game. And even Tyrod Taylor on the other side of the Miami-Houston game projects pretty well at 5,000.
I'm glad you named 13 quarterbacks there.
That's what it's one of those weeks, though.
Bill likes everybody.
Yeah,
but
can we talk about Taysom Hill?
Quarterbacks.
Can we talk about Taysom Hill real quick?
Yes, please do, because his stats last year when he was a starter were incredible. So
if they come out and say he's the starter, he's going to be mega chalky. If they come out and say he's starting the game, I think he'll get extremely popular. I mean, you look at what he did last year. He ran for 83 yards against Atlanta. He ran for 2 touchdowns against Atlanta in the other meeting. He ran for 2 touchdowns against Denver. So in his starting performances, I think he's going to get – I don't think he'll get crazy, but I think he'll get 15, 20% if they come out and say he's –
That's higher than Josh Allen?
No way.
If they come out and say he's playing the entire game, yes.
Wow.
I mean, who are you going to stack him with, Devin?
He doesn't need to be stacked. It's the same thing.
That's what drives that ownership, though. I mean, you're going to – people aren't going to – I mean, today – I mean, 4 years ago, you're right. Nobody did stack. But today, people stack. Who are you going to stack him with?
Last year, he was 15, 20, 25% in these games at 5,500, 5,300, and he wasn't stacking it with anybody.
I hope that happens this weekend. Then.
You can stack him with Alvin Kamara. I mean, it's a simple stack there.
wouldn't do that. I mean, I mean, because that correlation was awful last year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was very negatively correlated between those two players. If you're going to take a shot on them, find a wide receiver like Deontay Harris or somebody like that that's probably in the 3K range and maybe get lucky. I'm with you, John, especially let's put it this way too. I think he's really more viable in like single entry, 3-entry max, where you don't need that ridiculous variance to win. You don't need to hit that stack with 2 touchdowns or that double stack to necessarily do it like you might in the Millie Maker. So I think he's more viable there. But I also I get where Devin's coming from, but I also think the fact that we don't have certainty even at this point in the week is probably going to keep that ownership down just a little bit. But it'll be interesting. Now, one name nobody brought up, and I love playing guys who are great players, who are going to be Hall of Famers, who are
Baker
former
Mayfield.
MVPs, and everybody's like, oh, he's trash. Mahomes is back to Texas Tech. Mahomes. Nobody's going to play Patrick Mahomes this week when everybody's written him off. He's 7.8K, so he's what? 400 cheaper than Josh Allen. He has the stacking partners. Like, this guy just suddenly didn't suck overnight. So I think Mahomes is a really interesting tournament play, and we've got him right now 6% given early in the week. Man, give me triple the field of that.
I'm okay with it. I think early on, Mecole Hardman comes out as his top stacking partner for what it's worth. But I do think you can go to the other side of that as well with Jordan Love. I think there's a lot of value in that game right now because I think people are overreacting to Aaron Rodgers being gone. It's not like the Kansas City Chiefs have a good defense. There's a lot of goodness to be had in that game. One quarterback I want to talk about before we go on is Teddy Bridgewater against my Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are coming off a big game. I think this is a letdown game for the Cowboys. I think they win the game by a field goal. I don't think they cover the 10-point spread. I think this game is close. The Broncos have had a couple games of late that are of interest. I mean, they played against Washington last week in a really kind of a dull game. The same thing with Cleveland the week prior. They won one, they lost one. Both were close. When they played, I guess, lesser defenses, Teddy Bridgewater has had decent games this year. He's had a pair of 300-yard games, one with 2 touchdowns, one with 3 touchdowns. And then he played another one against the Pittsburgh Steelers where he just missed 300 yards and had a pair of touchdowns. He's only 5,300, and he's got his full weaponry back. Jerry Jeudy obviously returned last week. And when I looked at that receiving core, he comes out extremely high for me in terms of being a sharp player this week because of how cheap that receiving core is. So don't sleep on him. And, and we'll get to this. In the tight end section, please don't go to me first because I don't know how to say the fella's name.
Okay. Just before we get to the next position, there's some CD Lamb news. Like, it sounds like he got tripped up a bit in practice, and sounds like he might be even in question this weekend. Is that enough to take you off of Prescott, John, if Lamb would miss this week?
No, not at all. I mean, I think all that does is just kind of concentrate targets to Amari Cooper, who I already liked. And I read Michael Gallup might be coming back this week. Have we heard any updates on that just yet?
Gentlemen,
he's back at he's back at practice, but they've been slow playing it with his comeback, so I don't think it's 100% either way as of now.
Yeah, I know. I saw Blake Jarwin's not practicing, so Dalton Schultz gets a tick up there, and so if CeeDee Lamb's not there, then it just means you're heavy on Amari Cooper and Dalton Schultz, and you might even do a team stack, right? You run the Dak, Zeke, who comes out pretty high. We'll talk about running backs in a minute, and then Cooper, and then run it back with one of those receivers that I talked about in Denver. I think it's a sound way to approach this weekend.
All right, quick recap for you. Cash games. We think the high floor of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen seem like the prudent plays in your cash games. Again, in GPPs, a lot of different ways we can go. Kind of ran down most of those names. Let's get into the running back position here, John. We'll lead it off with you. And, an interesting week because we don't, Derrick Henry's on the shelf. McCaffrey doesn't look like he's going to be back this week. Kamara, he kind of takes a step back if Hill would be under center here. So what's the plan for us at running back this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's you don't have that one guy, as you said, that's 9K, so you can go a bit lower and still be okay and make a decent lineup. When I started kind of playing around with lineups earlier today in my research, I basically landed on two running backs. Zeke Elliott came out highest for me. He's no longer $8,600, $9,000. He's $7K in a game that Dallas is playing at home. I've already gone on record. I think they win this game. I don't think they blow them out. I just think he's a really solid play this week for cash games. I also like Austin Eckler against Philadelphia. It's another one of those games, high team total. He's a guy that he plays all aspects. If I'm not mistaken, I think Justin Jackson's hurt as well, so he should be getting a full bevy of snaps. He's 7,900. I think you can get both of those guys into your lineups. Because there's not a whole lot to like at the wide receiver position this week. We'll get to that in just a moment. But I think my highest cash game wide receiver, and it's not because I intentionally did so, the highest priced cash game wide receiver is 6,100. So I think you could spend a little more at this position, spend a little lower at wide receiver, and then you have some choices to make at tight end, despite the fact that you're spending up at quarterback.
Amazing what happens when Cooper Kupp is not on the main slate. Devin, your thoughts on running back?
Yeah, I don't know that I can go with Austin Eckler. I mean, I think it's a fine play. I just don't know that I want to spend $7,900 for him this week. I do like finishing the Eckler thought. I think the touches have been sort of all over the place. He had 6 carries against Baltimore in a game that they got blown out, and he only had 11 carries last week. He did have 6 receptions, so that's positive. But if I'm spending that much, I think I want a guy who I can trust a little bit more. I still don't believe in the touchdowns that he's had. So I'm going to look at a couple different players. I like Joe Mixon a lot this week. I know as a GPP play, I know the matchup is a difficult one against Cleveland, but Mixon's really been catching the ball along with running the ball pretty effectively. Struggled last week, but I think he's going to go overlooked. I like Cincinnati just to go all over Cleveland this week. Elijah Mitchell, I'm going back to him. I think he was going up against Arizona. Arizona's run defense is not as good as their pass defense, so I think that's a solid way to look for both cash and GPPs. And then as a GPP play, I'm looking at Cordero Patterson at 6,300. He's basically a cheap version of Austin Eckler. He's going to be popular, but you could even look at him in cash realistically. He's catching the ball. They're not going to be able to run it, so they're going to throw the ball to him, swing passes out of the backfield because New Orleans' run defense is one of the best in football. So I'm fine with Cordero Patterson in cash.
Man, what a
I know you hate him.
I mean, I didn't play him last week. Part of that was because I was lazy and didn't update my lineup after the Ridley news came out. Man, though, he still lucks into it, though. I mean, geez, the numbers last week, if he doesn't get that touchdown, you're looking at 9 for 35 and 5 for 37. Exciting.
But isn't that Austin Eckler?
No, it's not. Austin Eckler gets way more carries.
No, he doesn't.
No, come on. Now, Phil and John.
9, 14, 14. That's right in Austin Eckler territory, guys.
Austin Eckler's playing for a team that's got an implied team total of 26 points, and the Atlanta Falcons have the second lowest team total on the board, and they're playing against a very good defense in New Orleans.
But who else is going to score for them?
John, you held up the yellow black-eyed Joe you liked him.
Not for cash games. He started off with GPP, and he got our buy-in, and he was like, "Oh, I like him in cash too." No, that's a different story. For GPPs, I think he's a fairly solid play if he stays below 10%. If he gets above that,
he won't be, dude. We got him at 23 right now. So
he's going to be one of the most popular players this week.
Oh, if he's that high, then he becomes a bad play. I was looking at another site today, and they had him right at 10%.
I mean, we might be high on that. I don't know if he'll get as high as we got it right now, but Phil, sell us on Patterson a little bit because you seem to like him, and you're our GPP guy. So where does the rostership need to be on him? Where you're like, okay, like I'm gonna fade it, or at this level, I'm willing to go 2x the field.
If it goes over 12%, I'm probably out. I would say somewhere right about around there. I was thinking a little bit more along the lines of John, that 10, 12 is where he would land. In which case I like him, because you mentioned last week that he only caught 5 balls, but Matt Ryan only threw 27 times. So in the first, or not the first game without Ridley, but without Ridley in the lineup, he had a 20% target market share. And this week, I would say that the Falcons are going to have to throw 45 times. So I think you put his target projection back up closer to 8 or 9. Then you've got a high ceiling play, because we know that he's got touchdown equity in that offense as well. They use him in the red zone. So, those touchdowns are not exactly random. You know what I'm saying?
Leads the team in red zone carries and receptions.
Right. Are we up to me?
Yeah,
we're John. I mean, Phil, I can tell you're anxious. You've got some guys that you like, and you did mention Ezekiel Elliott earlier in the little face. So talk about him and whoever else you like in tournaments.
Yeah, so I've been making a habit of crowning a player the best play on the slate in any format recently, and Ezekiel Elliott is that guy this week. It's just he's mispriced, right? There's $500 to $800 missing from his salary. The Cowboys are home, favored by double digits, implied to score about 30. Look at weeks 3 through 5, right? They played the Eagles, Panthers, and Giants. Similar game scripts, and you got high-end RB1 production out of Elliott in those weeks. And the Broncos just made Dearness Johnson look like Walter Payton in week 7. As of right now, I'm not coming out with less than 40% exposure to Ezekiel Elliott in tournaments, and obviously he's a great cash game play. The other guy that I wanted to touch on was Myles Gaskin. Curious, where does RotoGrinders have him, Dan?
We're right now pretty high on him, 23.5% expected rostership. And I mean, it's Houston, man. Like 5.8K. I mean, is it a better matchup than Mitchell versus Arizona?
It's not.
Price? Yeah.
See, my thought process was that I guess it depends on how much you think the crowd is going to gravitate towards Tua at 5,800, right? Because he's easily stackable with Parker and Waddle, who are both cheap. And my thinking was that if you combine the ownership percentages of those 3 guys, then it kind of triples where Gaskin would end up. Probably not at 22% though. So I guess that remains to be seen where he shakes out as we get closer to Sunday. But my thought was that if those touchdowns for Miami end up coming on the ground, you're flying past all those Tua stacks. And as a matter of fact, even if you're playing a Tua stack and you want to get different with it, Gaskin has a double-digit target market share in every game but one this season, and each of the previous 4. So he's involved in the passing game. You could stack him with Tua, whereas you can't stack Alvin Kamara with Taysom Hill.
Okay, I want to talk about a few crappers. First off, John, can you whisper for me? Just give me a whisper.
Dan, you're sexy.
Okay, there we go. Wasn't expecting that. But I was hoping you'd say Boston Scott, because you're apparently the Boston Scott whisperer, John.
I tried to tell you.
Nice call last week. I mean, nobody wants to play this dude. I get it. But it is a good matchup. The Chargers have been dreadful versus the run this week or this year. And, we didn't even talk about Jalen Hurts. I guess everybody's ready to be all out on him after one game. How do we expect the Eagles to do offensively in this matchup Their team total looks like 24. It's not garbage. Like it's not horrible for this slate. So can we do anything with Boston Scott?
If you're asking me to be the Boston Scott whisperer for 2 weeks in a row, I'm going to I'm going to bail on this opportunity and say that I'm not interested in going down on the 100th episode of the Power Grid touting Boston Scott. Look, last week all I was saying was Kenneth Gainwell was probably not the play that folks were making him out to be because Scott could steal some action, and he indeed did that. And if you look at what they did last week, it was basically a three-headed monster. They had, I'm going from recollection here, but I want to say like 12, and 13 carries respectively. And they scored 44 points against a dreadful Lions defense. So I would just avoid this backfield altogether this week. There's not enough there, especially because all of their salaries are in that 5K range as well. So my recommendation would be to avoid it.
Best play on FanDuel this week, Damian Harris. Going up against Carolina is 6,600. He's had over 100 yards in 2 of his last 3 games, scored 4 touchdowns in 3 games. Carolina's defense is sort of on, I've been talking about the last couple of weeks, but they're sort of on the fringe of collapsing a little bit. So good. He doesn't catch passes, so he can't be in.
This is honesty time, okay? Everybody look at the camera, be honest here. When you saw that there was a Gore playing for the Chiefs, did you think, is that Frank Gore?
Absolutely.
That was Frank Gore Jr.
I thought it was his kid too. I did, because I knew his kid was in college like a year ago, and he was, getting close to graduate, and I was like, man, I'm pretty sure the old man retired, but his kid made it. So no, but
you mean it's no relation?
I don't believe so. I don't think
so.
Yeah. I could have just made something up. I could have just said.
I took it for granted it was a member of the Gore family.
It's his sister.
Dan, can I throw one more before we move on to wide receivers?
Yeah.
For GPPs, as of today, I'm looking at Chase Edmonds as a big play, 5,300. He's one of my top tier tournament plays this week. You've got AJ Green. We're just about to talk about wide receivers, but AJ Green is going to be out. DeAndre Hopkins at best is going to be hobbled and potentially out, and we don't know what's going to happen with that quarterback situation there, and that actually may end up playing into whether or not Chase Edmonds is a great player or not, depending on whether or not Kyler Murray is active. But as of today, if Kyler Murray is active, those other 2 wide receivers and the questions therein, Chase Edmonds, he catches a lot of passes. On DK, I think he's an excellent play. I'm seeing anywhere from like 5 to 8% projected rostership on him. And I've got him at almost double that. In fact, he's my 3rd highest running back to reach GPP value behind Myles Gaskin and Zeke Elliott, who Phil was already touting. So don't sleep on Chase Edmonds this weekend. James Conner's not going to score 2 touchdowns every week.
All right, a quick recap for you. In cash games, it seems strong consensus around Ezekiel Elliott being maybe the top option for you for cash. I think Austin Eckler absolutely in play. Cordero Patterson, definitely some love from the panel on him this week. Myles Gaskin, Eli Mitchell, a couple other names for you in that price range at 5.8K on DraftKings that you can look to play. Hey, I'm going to do one more thing, Devin, because I'm going to make your life easier, because we want these people to get in the comments and leave their name. Should they leave their Twitter handle? How are you going to reach these guys? You can't, YouTube makes it tough on us.
Yeah, leave your Twitter handle or email or something.
See, yeah,
some
leave
way
a
to contact. Instagram, who cares?
Yes, Twitter handle. We don't need your social security number.
We
just
might.
Twitter
We
handle.
might. That would help. Date of birth, mother's maiden name, all that will definitely help.
So we'll get those prizes out to you guys. Again, if you're listening to this on podcast, don't worry. Going over to the Football Guys YouTube feed, leave a comment over there as well. And as always, thank you guys for joining us. If you haven't checked us out over at RotoGrinders, great time to do it, especially if you want to go out and grind some other sports out there. We got so much going on. College hoops I think, believe it or not, like starts up in a week or so. So our combo package, you can get legitimately every sport, all of our optimizers, the expert picks. Check it out. And of course, footballguys.com. Definitely subscribe to that free newsletter. Give you all the up-to-the-date news you need, how to react to it, especially if you're a season-long player. It helps a good bit. So get those waiver claims and stuff in. Man, I'm so bad at that. So bad. So lazy. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. Like I talked about earlier, no Cooper Kupp. So sorry, Phil. You know, it was going to be like another week of Phil taking a victory lap on Cooper Kupp. You're going to have to find somebody else. But before we get to tournaments, Devin, take us through some cash game targets this week at this wideout spot.
Yeah, favorite cash game player this week is T. Higgins going up against Cleveland. I don't believe in this Cleveland team. They're unraveling. They have no leadership. They lost to the Steelers last week. We've talked about how they've struggled against wide receivers. Deontay Johnson broke a long one last week, but Claypool didn't do what we thought he might, but I like Higgins quite a bit this week. On the other side of the ball, you could run it back, not necessarily for cash, but I think Jarvis Landry's in a pretty good spot in a GPP. Had a horrible fourth quarter, 2 or 3 drops, a fumble, just an abysmal game. And at that price with no Odell Beckham, you look at what he did last year without Beckham, and he was pretty solid. So looking up the board a little bit, I know it's going to be a little bit. How do you not like Tyreek Hill in cash if you can afford him? He's turned into like this just quick pitch receiver that caught 12 passes last week. None of them were more than 3 or 4 yards down the field. If he continues that, I mean,
yeah,
Kelsey's washed, which we'll talk about tight ends in a little bit. But he hit age 32 and he hasn't done anything at the tight end position. So,
these are the target numbers: 18, 9, 12, 13, 12. Those are his last 5 games. And I don't disagree with you too, because if he's going to get these short passes, it's just kind of PPR points, but we know he can still take one deep. It just takes one 50-yarder, and he's like, it's not. I'm not saying he's getting there on that one play, but man, does that help pad the stats. So he's got a huge ceiling. I think he's a fine play in a week where there's not a whole lot of certainty, but as John alluded to earlier, he doesn't want to pay over 6.1K. I'm guessing, like we talked about earlier, Amari Cooper is probably going to be ridiculous chalk if we're without CeeDee Lamb this week, because he's sub 6K this week. And, Denver, not an easy matchup, but dude looked pretty dominant against Minnesota that last week. And you take Von Miller out of that defense, bye-bye some pass rush.
Yeah, I like Amari Cooper. He's probably one of my top plays. I did like the Jarvis Landry call. I can live with Tyreek Hill if you want to go there. If I'm going to spend up, though, typically I like to spend up at running back just because you got the volume that's associated with that. I'm talking about cash games here.
Unless it's Cooper Kupp.
Say again?
Unless it's Cooper Kupp.
Unless it's Cooper Kupp, which I think we've agreed he's the exception to the rule in 2021. The one guy that Devin didn't mention, and I don't know, I'll defer to Devin he's the fan rule guy, but on DraftKings, Hunter Renfrow comes out super high for me this week. He's 4,800. Obviously, we know Henry Ruggs is out of the equation, and there just isn't a whole lot there. He's a possession receiver. He's basically the Cole Beasley of the Raiders, and we all know how Cole Beasley does when I recommend them. So go ahead with Hunter Renfrow. I did like the T. Higgins call. Who else is on my list here? Brandon Cooks. He's my 6,100 against Miami. He's basically the only guy there that can catch the ball. And we know they're going to be playing from behind, and he always seems to get open. So I guess the messaging here is middle range wide receivers, high volume, and just move on from there.
FanDuel, Devin, I know you play a lot over there. Stephon Diggs, lock. 7-6 over there. Like, that's just lock and load against Jacksonville, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's stack those two with Allen and Diggs. just like last week.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back to that well, and he's going to score a touchdown in this game. It's just a matter of whether he scores multiple. Phil, okay, let's hear it. Okay, this will be interesting. You know Cooper Kupp, so who's the guy we got to play here this week, Phil? Prove that you can do it when Kupp is not on the slate.
Well, first I have to recover from two things. Number one, Devin burned my substantial eyebrows off with that Travis Kelce take. My God, he's washed. I guess we'll see if he fell off the age cliff. I mean, I guess it's possible. The other thing is,
he did.
I'm going to let the crowd in behind the curtain a little bit. We have a show sheet that we refer to, and it lists some injuries, right? So that we don't get any of the injury news wrong. And, you've got stuff on there like, Sterling Shepard has a quad injury and AJ Green has COVID. And then there's one that says Odell Beckham, his injury is hates Baker. And who is responsible for that? It's been making me, that's John, that's been making me giggle for the entire wide receiver segment. Wide receivers for me, I agree in cash games with John's recommendation. What stands out is the mid-range. You've got Amari Cooper, whether Lamb plays or not, 5,700 is too cheap for him. You've got Higgins, as Devin called out. Both of the Miami guys, I think, are probably viable. Parker and Waddle are heavily targeted enough. Cole Beasley, again, if he plays, he's got a rib injury. He was out of practice this week. So you got to keep an eye on that. But if he plays and Dawson Knox doesn't, I think that's what we saw the result of last week when Beasley had one of his big PPR games. Moving on to GPPs, all on board with the Jarvis Landry call, especially with Odell Beckham hating Baker. The results didn't really jump off the screen last week, but he was in on 90% of the snaps. He had 32% of the targets. The Bengals secondary is far more forgiving than the Steelers, and there's just nobody else on that team to catch passes if Beckham's not there and Kareem Hunt is out. So I think he's good for cash at 5,100 or tournaments. And I think people just don't love playing Browns wide receivers, which is why he's also good for tournaments. And then other than that, I'm going to get a little bit thinner with these next two plays, but one is Christian Kirk. I think I'm hearing a little bit of buzz around Rondale Moore at 4,200 with AJ Green out with COVID. Kirk is probably a little bit more high variance because his targets are usually downfield, but if AJ Green is out and if DeAndre Hopkins is hampered with this injury that he hasn't been able to shake all season, it should mean more downfield looks for Christian Kirk, assuming Kyler Murray is starting and healthy, and that's a game that could certainly score a lot of points. And Kirk's played well this year, kind of quietly, over a 3x multiple of his current salary in 3 out of 8 games. And at that rate, that's much higher than his percent rostered is going to be. And then the only other name on my list, and I don't know how I feel about it really, but Henry Ruggs, first of all, terrible what happened there, but second of all, he wasn't heavily targeted, so it's not like his absence creates this huge target void in the Raiders offense, but he did play a very specific role, and that's as the downfield threat. Zay Jones is going to inherit his snaps, but he's not going to inherit that role. Zay Jones is a possession receiver. So I think that some of those plays that you drew up for Ruggs could end up going to Bryan Edwards, who can get downfield and is a prototype, physically anyway, a prototype wide receiver one in the NFL. If he bumps up to a 15 to 17% target share and he's at 4,100 and he's going up against the Giants, who are a bottom 12 pass defense, I could see him emerging as a 1B to Darren Waller's 1A with Ruggs out of the equation. So I'll probably have a little bit
I mean,
of Brian Edwards in tournaments.
I'd rather play him at 2% than Renfro at 10 to 15 or 15 to 20, whatever, that number comes in at. So I don't think you're off there. Any other guys have thoughts on Arizona? Because that is an interesting spot because Green is out and Hopkins, he left the game, didn't come back, late in that second half after he re-aggravated that injury. Like if both those guys are out, there's just huge target volume to go somewhere, assuming Kyler plays. Kirk makes sense, but like Moore is really cheap at 4.2. Like, can we get behind him at all, Devin?
Sure. I mean, it all depends on the health of DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he's a guy that if he's on the field, he's still getting his targets. I don't think he's gonna be out there and for 50% of the plays. I think he's either going to be healthy or not. If he's out for whatever reason, I think Rondale Moore is as good of a play as what Arizona has. So I could see easily 8 to 10 targets, and that might be low. So they're going to have to throw the ball to somebody. But Zach Ertz is also a good play.
Yeah, I like that call. All right, let's quickly recap the wide receiver position cash games in particular. I think Amari Cooper, T. Higgins, both those names coming up a good bit. Renfro on the cheap under 5K. Jarvis Landry as well around that 5K number, somebody that I think we can play. On the high end, in particular on FanDuel, I think Stephon Diggs is near a cash game lock at his price on that site. Okay, let's move to tight end position. John told us to wait before we go to him. So we'll start with Devin here because he's got the fire take that Travis Kelce is dust. I will say this much. He legitimately, something didn't look right with him last week. I don't know if he was concussed, if he, had something to drink before the game, but he, just moving around looked bad. Did not look himself at all. So I don't think he's done, but that game certainly was concerning from what I saw last week. Tell me why you think he's done, and who do you like at this position?
So as someone who just turned 32, you're all downhill. You're all downhill from after that point. No, I'm joking. But there's a clear physical difference between myself and Travis Kelce.
No.
Yeah, just a little bit. Anyway, he's not washed. Washed isn't the right word. He's just not elite anymore, and he shouldn't be $7,000. Something doesn't look right. He's not getting open. He's dropping the ball. I mean, he's not getting that separation of just how you look at the last couple of years. You're like, how did Travis Kelce get 15 yards away from the nearest defender? And this year, every catch he's getting hit as soon as he touches the ball. So I'm very concerned about Travis Kelce going forward. It's why I like Tyreek Hill. They're trying these little pop passes. They're trying these little crossing routes. They're trying to get him in space. Does Kelce have a couple more games throughout his career that he'll catch 70, 80 yards and a touchdown? Absolutely. But I don't think he's that guy that's 150 and 2. And if you're paying up $7,000, the price hasn't come down enough for me. I'm sure Phil will like him because he's not going to be popular this week. So, but I can't do it until further notice.
All right. Fair enough. John, on you. Were you the one that didn't like Dan Arnold last week? Somebody didn't like Dan Arnold. Me. Oh, sorry, Devin.
I actually just about everywhere last week. It's okay. If you're going to be wrong everywhere in 1 week and then be right the rest of the weeks and it washes out. It's all good.
So, John, what about you this week? Arnold right off the bat looking like another popular play this week, and he looked good last week. I mean, he was involved in a ton of snaps and a ton of targets, more than got there for his price, and he's still sub 3.5K on DraftKings.
Yeah, he's near the top of my list this week in terms of possibilities. He's getting into a threshold, though, that I don't know. I don't think you have to play him the way that I felt last week that you had to play the cheap tight end. And I'm going to cue you guys because I'm not even going to try.
I got it.
Noah Fant's backup in Denver, Alberts.
Aquagunam.
Albert O.
Albert O. Albert O. He's 2,600. He plays for Denver. You'll know the rest when you get there. But he's the kind of lock and load candidate this week for cash games at 2,600. If you want to flip those two digits, 2,600 to 6,200, you can go with Darren Waller. I'm okay with that in cash as well. But those are my two cash game candidates this week. Waller for all the reasons we already talked about, Hunter Renfrow and potentially Bryan Edwards. You're going to get some additional action there. And Waller, I think I was looking just before we got started. He's got a 20% market share of the team's offense this year when he's active, when he's fully active. So I like that. And Las Vegas has a fairly high team total, 25 points on a week where there's not a whole lot of high scoring teams. But for me, it's probably going to be spending down at the most outside of defense, the most highly variable position, so that I can fit that expensive quarterback, those two higher end running backs that I talked about earlier, and then the middle tier wide receivers. And then I'll just punt here at wide receiver and hope that Albert O catches 3 or 4 passes for 30 or 40 yards, and then it's gravy.
Phil, I'm going to throw one name out before I give it to you. I think this could be a week to go back to Gesicki as well. Buffalo last week, he has never played well against that team, like hardly ever in his career. He gets Houston back this week, and he was been just a really big target for Tua, and you just can't get a better game script here than going against this awful Houston team. So he's sub 5K. He's a guy I think we can play. What do you think, Phil? What you got?
I like that call on Gesicki. Devontae Parker being active does cap his ceiling a little bit, but I think he's a solid play at 4,900. I think that the discussion about tight end this week starts and ends with Albert O. You're going to play him in cash games. I don't think there's any doubt about that. This guy's got athleticism, and he's got red zone chops. He's a good prospect. He's just been behind Noah Fant, who is drafted higher. If Dan Arnold got to, what was he in the Millie last week, 18% or something like that, it was higher than I thought. If Dan Arnold, who is not your prototype popular play, if he got to 18% or close enough to it, Albert O, I think, is going to clear 20% in tournaments. And I think at that point, obvious fade. You got to think about what's the ceiling on Albert O and what is the ceiling that he helps create for your lineups. And, tight end is volatile. Jerry Jeudy was back last week. Noah Fant saw just 4 targets in the game last week, and Denver is implied to score 20 points or thereabouts on the road in Dallas. So if you see that roster percentage start getting carried away, and I would have to imagine it's going to, and you guys could correct me if you think I'm wrong. I
think you're wrong. I don't think it's going to climb.
The problem is you have Tyler Conklin there too, who's going to get some love. He's looked good the last 2 weeks. You can fit Mike Gesicki. I like Mike Gesicki a lot. I think.
Hold on. What's the thesis here? What's the difference between Dan Arnold last week and Albert Oba in?
You don't have to pay for Cooper Kupp.
That's actually a really good point.
Roster construction.
There's quarterbacks that are sub 6K that you can play. Last week there was nothing. So
there was a trend line towards Arnold too. Like he was starting to get more targets. That was like his second or third game, in that offense, and clearly they have nobody else to throw to. Like once DJ Chark went out, Jamal Agnew suddenly became like their top wide receiver. So you got to factor. I mean, Albert O, he was like okay there at Missouri. Like he's a good player there, but he's done nothing as a professional. He's got 1 touchdown week 1. I mean, I hope he is chalk, because this is what you do. Normally, a lot of times I get nervous when there's mega chalk, because you say to yourself, okay, I'll just eat the chalk and then win elsewhere. Even in cash games, if he is chalk in cash games, Fade all day long, boys and girls. All day long, fade it to high heaven. And when he gets you about 2 fantasy points, you'll be way ahead of the field no matter who you take. There you go. That's your.
I'm gonna go on record that his roster percentage is over 15% this week.
Oh my goodness! No way! No way!
I'm just going to add one more layer here to really make it even more complicated. He's as far as position player, there is a defense, but as far as position players, my model says there is no player this weekend who's more likely to hit 4x value than Albert O. Take that for it's worth. It's 31.2%. Will I have 31.2%? I absolutely will not. But he is very highly rated.
You a scientist or a mathematician? Because I think there's some numbers that might be wrong in there, John.
I know what I'm doing here.
Okay.
I have 100 episodes of experience.
Mark Andrews, we didn't even mention him. We got a very popular Lamar Jackson, and this guy he's pretty consistent every single week, and the price is not outrageous at 5.5 on DraftKings. I think he's definitely in your GPP player pool and going to be a popular stack there with Lamar Jackson. Okay, quick tight end reset. Man, we're all over the map here on this one. Dan Arnold, I'm okay with that play. Albert O, the guys in the bottom row are into that guy. And Mike Gesicki, I think we all were kind of in a consensus that he looks like a solid play this week. Again, if you're joining us, thank you so much. And you too, leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up. That helps us. Leave us a review on iTunes if you're listening on the RotoGrinders Daily Fantasy Football feed. Great. Thank you. If you're listening on the Audible, great. Thank you. Leave a review. Listen on both. Why not? Okay, let's get to team defense. And, oh, man. So, do we just play the Chiefs against the rookie at, 2.3K on DraftKings? And I mean, playing the Chiefs defense feels like a dreadful move, but man, rookie quarterbacks, and technically he's not a rookie. I get it, but they've been really, really bad outside of Mike White, I guess. So is it just the Chiefs? Is that it? That the play?
In cash games, yes.
Cash games, yes.
Okay.
GPP is my worry is that the Green Bay could run the ball 30 times this week and just slow it down. So I don't know that the turnover upside is there for a GPP.
I agree. Don't play them in GPPs. They're going to get up to 20%. Never play a 20% on defense.
I agree with that take. We've got the Dolphins pretty popular too right now. They play Houston. The Bills are expensive. I mean, maybe if you can play Albert O, you can get the Bills defense for 4K over there on DraftKings. Throw me some other names out there, guys, because I hate team defense. What do we got?
How about the Falcons going up against New Orleans with questions of quarterback? No appreciable wide receivers to talk about. I like them at 2,500, and then the Bengals going up against Devin and Baker Mayfield at 3,000. I think that they're a decent GPP defense.
Packers against the Chiefs at 2,800. Patrick Mahomes leads the league in interceptions.
He's washed. That's what I heard.
Totally done. He's totally done. Yep.
Man, you guys are missing the spot. Mac Jones is on the road this week.
Oh yeah, that's right.
God.
You got to play the Panthers in the Stephon Gilmore revenge game.
Yeah.
I like that. Good narrative.
I'm joking about the Packers. Don't play them.
Oh, thank you.
What about maybe the Chargers against the Eagles? I know it's on the road, but I don't trust Jalen Hurts to complete passes. I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't love it, but it's not super cheap. But nobody's going to play it. So, all right, fellas, that just about wraps us up. Congrats again, 100 episodes here of the Power Grid. We are wrapping this one up, and be sure leave yourself your Twitter handle in the comments. Devin's got a bunch of goodies he's going to give away. We've got some RotoGrinders Premium we're going to give away. So good chance if you put your name in there, you're going to get something from one of us. So definitely do that. We thank you so much. Again, it means the world to us to have you viewers and listeners to this show. We love doing it with you each and every Thursday night. Final thoughts before we get out of here, guys. Give me something that's going to win a tournament, John.
I'll give you a different final thought. How about I add to the swag? I've got a staff issued Footballguys
Rain jacket?
rain jacket. So
Whoa.
this weekend, whoever can make it rain, I'll post a contest. We'll do 50 people. First 50 people to sign up. Whoever makes it rain and finishes at top, we'll send them a rain jacket. Footballguys. It's staff issued, so it's not you can't just buy it. This is a collection.
Is this tip and pick worn?
It may have been worn when I got it. It's not, I don't typically go out in the rain unless I'm golfing. And then a yellow slicker does not look great in the golf course. So
Like the Gordon's fisherman with that thing on, right?
Right.
The big yellow jacket.
We'll give that away to the person who wins the contest. I'll post it when I retweet the link for the show.
Hey, I've got one last thought that's really a last comment. Big news for Dan Back today, and congratulations is in order. There's been a passing of the torch at RotoGrinders, and Dan is now the big boss man, from what I understand. So, congratulations, Dan! Amazing and very well deserved, and looking forward to what you're going to do over there going forward.
Thanks, Phil. That's awfully nice of you to say, and it's been incredible. And I don't need to get too sappy into it, but the real thanks goes to the founders, Cal, Cam, and Riley, who conceived RotoGrinders, over a decade ago. And I've been preaching it this way. They've changed so many lives through DFS, including my own and many other people here. Been able to make careers out of hobbies. And it's been an awesome ride. So I'm just excited to take the torch from them and carry it. But thank you, Phil. Really.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. All right. Thank you all for joining us here this week. We'll be back next Thursday for another edition of the DFS Powergrid here, presented by RotoGrinders and Footballguys. For Devin, for Tip and Pick, for Phil, I'm Dan. Good luck this week. Talk to you next Thursday.